In a certain land long ago there lived a master who possessed great wealth. His holdings were vast, his influence far-reaching, and his wisdom tested by years of careful stewardship. This master understood that wealth was not merely gold and silver stored in chambers, but power that moved through the hands of men, creating abundance or leaving barrenness in its wake. The time came when this master would journey to a distant country on matters of great importance. His departure would be lengthy, his return uncertain in timing though certain in fact. He could not leave his wealth idle, for wealth that does not move begins to decay like water that sits too long in a vessel. And so he called before him 3 of his servants, men who had walked in his household and witnessed his ways. To the first servant he entrusted 5 talents. Each talent represented more wealth than most men would see in a lifetime of labor. The weight of the silver was substantial, the responsibility even more so. This servant had shown himself capable in smaller matters, quick to understand, swift to act. His hands were steady, his mind sharp for the movements of trade and opportunity. To the second servant he gave 2 talents. This man was reliable, though perhaps not as bold in vision as the first. He had proven himself trustworthy with the master's household affairs, careful with accounts, diligent in his duties. The master saw in him a steadiness that could preserve and increase what was given. To the third servant he entrusted 1 talent. Even this single portion was a fortune beyond measure for a man of humble station. This servant had served faithfully in the smaller duties of the household. He swept the courtyards, tended the gardens, kept the gates. His faithfulness in these simple tasks had earned him this trust. The master spoke to each man the same words before his departure. He told them that what he had given was not merely for safekeeping, but for use. The silver was to work as he himself would work it. They were to trade, to invest, to see multiplication. Each talent carried within it the potential for growth, like seed that contains the promise of harvest if properly planted and tended. The servants received their portions and watched their master's caravan disappear beyond the horizon. The dust settled, and they were left with their treasure and their choice. The first servant felt the weight of responsibility settle upon him like a mantle. 5 talents meant 5 opportunities, 5 chances to prove worthy of greater trust. He did not delay. Within days he had entered the marketplace, studying the flow of goods, the needs of merchants, the patterns of profit and loss. He bought grain when it was plentiful and prices low, storing it carefully until scarcity drove values higher. He purchased olive oil from pressing season and sold it when winter made such goods precious. He learned which fabrics sold well in which seasons, which metals would increase in value as building projects demanded materials. Month by month, his understanding grew. He began to see wealth not as static treasure, but as flowing water that must be channeled to create power. His 5 talents began to work, each one multiplying through careful attention and bold action. By the end of the first year, his portion had grown significantly. By the second year, the growth compounded. Trade by trade, season by season, the silver increased until what had been 5 talents became 10. The second servant also understood his charge. 2 talents were his to multiply, a substantial trust requiring wisdom and care. He too entered the world of trade, though perhaps more cautiously than his fellow servant. He invested in known goods, established routes of commerce, reliable partnerships with trustworthy merchants. His approach was steadier, less dramatic in its ventures, but no less effective in its outcomes. He bought and sold wool, traded in pottery, invested in the tools that craftsmen needed for their work. His 2 talents moved through his hands like living things, growing slowly but surely. Each profit was reinvested, each gain building upon the last. Through patient work and careful judgment, his portion doubled, becoming 4 talents by the time of testing. But the 3rd servant looked upon his single talent with different eyes. He saw not opportunity but burden, not potential but peril. The weight of the silver seemed heavy in his hands, not with promise, but with fear. What if he lost it? What if his trading failed? What if thieves stole it, or bad investments consumed it? The master was known to be exacting in his expectations. Better perhaps to preserve what had been given than to risk it in the uncertain world of commerce. This servant had witnessed the losses that sometimes came to traders. He had seen merchants ruined by storms that sank their ships, by thieves that plundered their caravans, by changes in demand that left them holding worthless goods. The marketplace seemed full of danger to eyes that looked for peril rather than promise. And so he made his choice. He took his talent and wrapped it carefully in cloth, protecting it from tarnish and damage. He dug a hole in a secret place, far from his dwelling where none would think to look. The earth he chose was dry, unlikely to rust the silver or damage its value. He buried the talent deep, marking the spot in his memory, and covered all traces of his work. Each night thereafter he would walk past that place and feel a certain satisfaction. The talent was safe. No thief could steal it, no bad investment could diminish it, no failed trade could consume it. It would remain exactly as the master had left it, unchanged and unchanging, ready for return when the time came. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and months became years. The first 2 servants continued their work, their portions growing steadily. They learned the rhythms of prosperity, the disciplines required for increase, the wisdom needed to navigate both opportunity and loss. Their understanding of wealth deepened as they practiced its principles. But the 3rd servant's talent lay buried, earning nothing, producing nothing, as static and lifeless as the earth that covered it. He continued his simple duties around the household, sweeping and tending, keeping gates and maintaining order. Life proceeded much as it had before the master's departure, except for the secret knowledge of treasure hidden beneath the ground. The master's return came without warning, as such returns often do. His caravan appeared on the horizon one morning, dust clouds announcing his approach. Word spread quickly through the household, and preparations began for his reception. The servants who had received talents knew that the time of accounting had arrived. The first servant came forward eagerly, his countenance bright with anticipation. He carried with him not 5 talents, but 10, the fruit of his faithful stewardship. He presented them to his master with quiet satisfaction, recounting briefly the trades and investments that had doubled the original portion. The master received the account with approval, commending the servant's faithfulness and wisdom. Here was a man who understood the nature of wealth, who could be trusted with greater responsibilities, who had proven himself worthy of expanded authority. The second servant followed, bearing 4 talents instead of 2. His methods had been different, his approach more cautious, but his faithfulness was equally evident. The master showed the same approval, the same recognition of proven character and growing wisdom. This servant too had demonstrated understanding of stewardship, had shown himself capable of multiplication through patient work and sound judgment. Then came the third servant, carrying his single talent carefully wrapped, exactly as it had been given years before. He presented it to his master with words he believed would demonstrate his caution and care. He spoke of protection, of safety, of preservation. He had known the master to be a demanding man, he said, one who expected much. He had feared to risk the talent in uncertain ventures, choosing instead to keep it secure and unchanged. The master received the talent in silence, feeling its familiar weight, observing its unchanged condition. Here was wealth that had learned nothing, gained nothing, produced nothing. It was precisely as it had been left, which meant it had failed entirely in its purpose. Wealth that does not multiply is not truly wealth at all, but merely metal sleeping in the ground. The master's response was measured but clear. The servant's fear had made him unfaithful. His caution had become negligence. His desire for safety had resulted in complete failure of stewardship. The talent was taken from him and given to the servant who had proven most faithful in multiplication. Those who understand how to use wealth wisely receive more to steward, while those who fail to use it at all lose even what they had. The first servant, having proven himself with 10 talents, was given authority over many things, his understanding of wealth's principles making him suitable for greater responsibilities. The second servant, faithful with 4 talents, likewise received expanded trust and opportunity. But the third servant, who had failed to understand the fundamental nature of wealth, found himself removed from stewardship entirely. Years passed, and the wisdom of the master's decisions became clear. The servants who had learned to multiply wealth continued to do so, their understanding growing deeper with experience. They became men of influence and substance, not through sudden blessing, but through faithful application of wealth's unchanging principles. Their prosperity flowed outward, creating opportunities for others, supporting trades and crafts, enabling the flourishing of the entire community. The buried talent, now in the hands of one who understood its purpose, began immediately to work and multiply. What had been dormant earth became flowing stream. What had been static metal became dynamic force for abundance and provision. In quiet moments, long after the accounting was finished, the truth became clear to all who witnessed these events. Wealth reveals the heart of those who handle it. Some see opportunity where others see only danger. Some see potential where others see only burden. The silver itself is neither good nor evil, neither safe nor dangerous. It becomes what the steward makes it through the choices of faithfulness or fear, wisdom or worry, action or avoidance. The servants who multiplied their portions had learned something beyond the mechanics of trade and investment. They had discovered that wealth flows toward those who understand its nature and use it according to its design. It grows in the hands of the faithful, increases under the care of the wise, multiplies in the possession of those who see it not as treasure to be hoarded, but as tool to be employed. The servant who buried his talent had failed to grasp this fundamental truth. His fear of loss had guaranteed loss. His desire for safety had ensured waste. His attempt to preserve had resulted in complete forfeiture. He had treated dynamic potential like static possession, living force like dead matter, flowing stream like stagnant pool. The master's distribution had not been arbitrary. Each servant had received according to his ability, his capacity for growth, his readiness for responsibility. The portions were not equal in size, but equal in opportunity. Each talent carried the same potential for doubling, the same call for faithfulness, the same test of character and wisdom. Those who passed the test discovered that wealth is not reward for worthiness, but responsibility for service. The talents were not gifts to be enjoyed, but tools to be employed, not treasures to be consumed, but resources to be multiplied. The servants who understood this principle found themselves entrusted with ever greater stewardship, their influence expanding as their faithfulness was proven. The parable spread throughout that region, told and retold by those who witnessed its unfolding. Men began to understand that wealth tests the heart before it multiplies in the hands. Those who approach it with fear find their fears confirmed, while those who approach it with faithful wisdom discover its abundance. The silver reveals what was already present in the character, bringing to light what was hidden in the soul. Generations came and went, but the truth remained unchanged. In every age, in every land, wealth continues to flow toward those who understand its nature and away from those who misunderstand its purpose. It multiplies in faithful hands and diminishes in fearful ones, grows under wise stewardship, and shrinks under foolish neglect. The talents still move through the world, testing hearts, revealing character, rewarding faithfulness with greater responsibility. They come to each generation bearing the same opportunity, demanding the same choice between fear and faith, between preservation and multiplication, between the safety of the buried treasure and the risk of faithful stewardship. Some still choose the buried talent, seeking safety in stagnation, finding comfort in the unchanged weight of unused potential. Others take the path of multiplication, accepting the risks of faithful stewardship, discovering that wealth rewards those who treat it according to its nature rather than according to their fears. The master continues his journeys, departing and returning, entrusting and accounting, rewarding faithfulness with expanded opportunity, and removing unfaithfulness from stewardship altogether. His standards remain constant, his expectations unchanged, his distribution of talents continuing according to the capacity and character of those who receive them. And in the quiet moments between departure and return, between entrustment and accounting, the talents work their patient testing of every heart they touch. Some grow to 10, some to 4, some remain buried in the ground, waiting for the day when every steward must give account of what was done with what was received. The earth holds many buried talents, wrapped carefully and preserved unchanged, testament to fear that masqueraded as wisdom, caution that became unfaithfulness, safety that resulted in complete loss. But it also witnesses the abundance that flows from faithful stewardship, the multiplication that comes from understanding wealth's true nature, the prosperity that follows those who treat talents as tools rather than treasures. These are the chronicles of wealth, not as men desire it, but as it is formed,